Have you ever thought about how a country's map can just change? I mean, completely redrawn in a single year. Well, that's exactly what went down in northern India back in 1966. We're going to dig into how one of the most powerful states in the country was literally split into pieces, and why, believe me, it still matters a whole lot today.
And I'm not talking about some tiny little border tweak here. Nope. This was a full-on trifurcation. A huge, influential state, East Punjab, was essentially wiped off the map and replaced with 3 brand new entities. Just think about that.
So, yeah, the big question, the one you're probably asking right now, is just why? What on earth could be so powerful that it would make a government decide to literally tear a state apart?
To get to the bottom of this, we've got to look at the root cause, the real engine behind this whole thing. It wasn't about money, it wasn't about war, it was about something much more personal. It was a long, passionate demand for a state based on language.
And that brings us to something called the Punjabi Suba movement. Now, what's so fascinating here is that this wasn't some idea that just popped up in 1966. Oh no, this was the result of decades of struggle, of activism, all focused on one single powerful idea, that people who speak the Punjabi language deserve their own state. But you know, an idea this big, this revolutionary, it was never going to be a smooth ride, not even close. It didn't just face some opposition, it kicked off a massive national debate that split the country over what the future of India should even look like. I mean, this wasn't just some boring debate between bureaucrats. This was a full-blown battle of ideologies. And the pushback wasn't coming from some small fringe group either. 2 of the loudest voices against the division were right at the heart of the Indian government.
So, first up, you've got Marji Desai, a real heavyweight in the ruling Congress party and a future prime minister. His whole argument was about keeping the country stable. He saw this demand as opening a Pandora's box, basically fearing that if they gave in, every other group would want their own state, leading to the balkanization of India, breaking it up into smaller, weaker pieces. For him, a strong India meant big, diverse states.
And then, on the other side of the opposition, you had another future prime minister, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, and his Jana Sangh party. Now, their concern was a little different. It was less about the country breaking apart and more about, well, communal harmony. They basically argued that this movement wasn't really about language at all, but was a sneaky way to demand a Sikh state, which they worried would alienate the region's Hindu minority. So they came up with a totally different idea.
And this is where you can really see the two completely clashing visions, right? On one hand, you have the Punjabi Suba, a state defined simply by the language people spoke. But on the other, you have Vajpayee's Mahapunjab, or Greater Punjab, which actually argued for making the state even bigger to strengthen that shared Hindu-Sikh identity, not divide it.
So you've got these 2 political giants dead set against it. You'd think that would be the end of the story, right? But somehow the division actually happened. Despite all that powerful resistance, a new prime minister, Indira Gandhi, made a different call, and that decision led directly to the trifurcation of 1966. And when the government finally did pivot, man, it happened fast. Just look at this timeline from 1966. On March 9th, the ruling party gave it the green light. By April, it was official government policy. The actual law was passed in September, and by November 1st, poof, the new states were officially born. The map was totally redrawn in less than a year. So how did they actually carve it up? Well, it was a pretty clean 3-way split, and it all came down to one thing: language. The areas where most people spoke Punjabi formed the new, smaller state of Punjab. The Hindi-speaking areas, they were carved out to create the brand new state of Haryana. And finally, the hilly districts where people spoke Bahari languages were just transferred over to Himachal Pradesh.
Okay, but what about the capital city, Chandigarh? That was a whole other puzzle. And the solution they came up with, it was unique. The city became a union territory. That means it doesn't belong to either state. Instead, it serves as a shared capital for both Punjab and Haryana, and it's run directly by the central government. It was a creative fix for sure, but it also created a point of tension that is, get this, still not resolved today.
So when you look back, what's the real legacy of 1966? On one hand, it created new states and fulfilled a dream that was decades old, but it also left behind this really complex, really contested history, with consequences that are still playing out right now.
So let's just recap the key players and what they were fighting for. You had the Punjabi Subab movement, right? Their goal was simple:
linguistic identity. Then you had Morarji Desai fighting against it to keep the nation unified. And finally, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, also against it, but pushing his own Maha Punjab idea to protect communal harmony. 3 totally different visions for the future.
So at the end of the day, the line got drawn on the map. But it really makes you think, doesn't it? When you draw a border to protect one part of an identity, like language, what happens to everything else that people share? What becomes of a common history, of a culture that's all tangled up together? That's the question that still hangs over this story.